I would like you to follow me as I attempt to follow Jesus into the temple. Our way into the temple is via the story of Jesus' arrival at the temple in Jerusalem, which comes to us from the anonymous gospel storyteller, which we call John, who attempted to follow Jesus into the temple some 60 to 70 years after this story was first told, long after the temple in Jerusalem had been destroyed. Before its destruction, in the year 70, by the forces of the Roman Empire, the temple in Jerusalem was considered by the people of Jesus' homeland to be the most sacred site on earth, the Holy of Holies, where Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, could be experienced and worshipped. So it is not surprising that the temple in Jerusalem should play a significant role in all of the anonymous gospel storytellers' attempts to portray the life of Jesus of Nazareth. The temple in Jerusalem was, after all, a place of pilgrimage where the people of Jesus' homeland traveled in the hope of encountering Yahweh. Yahweh, the name used by Jesus' contemporaries to express the sacred name of the mystery which we call God. Yahweh, the Hebrew expression which can be translated as I am who am, or I shall be who I shall be. Such a beautiful way to express the mystery which is beyond our ability to name. So beautiful, in fact, that the children of Yahweh did not speak this name. Indeed, long before the birth of Jesus, it was the custom of the Jewish people not to speak, but to breathe the name of the Holy One. I invite you to follow me as I attempt to follow Jesus into the temple, the Holy of Holies, a sacred place upon the earth. Only I recognize that the difference between us, between you and I, and between all of us and Jesus, this distance of time and space presents a challenge which not even our splendid 21st century technology can traverse. However, we have at our disposal our mind's eye, the place where our most sacred memories reside. Some of you may actually have memories of the ruins of the Temple of Jerusalem, but I dare say that my own memories of the ruins of the temple in Jerusalem, they fail to elicit the sense of the sacred space which I long for in a temple. So please follow me in your mind's eye to your sacred space, the place on this planet where you have found the mystery, who is the love which we call God. If you are as blessed as I have been, there isn't just one sacred place to behold with your mind's eye. But for me, the vast majority of the sacred spaces in which I have encountered the one who is, those sacred spaces, they tend to be out there upon the earth, specifically for me on the rugged coastline of my beloved British Columbia. I'm sure that each of you have many spots upon the earth which you experience as sacred, as holy, as temple. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a moment and allow your mind's eye to select your Holy of Holies, the sacred space upon the earth where you encounter the one who is love. Long before humans began to erect temples to make sacred spaces, the earth herself was our first temple. So how very appropriate for earthlings to encounter our Creator in the sacredness of the earth. As I lead you into the temple, which is the earth, let me share with you the sacred space which I have been returning to again and again. Since I was about 16 years old, I discovered this holy place shortly after I got my driver's license. And over the decades, I have made so very many pilgrimages to this glorious temple to walk upon its holy ground, gaze upon its breathtaking, majestic splendor, and offer prayers of praise and thanksgiving to the Creator of all that I survey, prayers which speak not with words, but with silence. My sanctuary, my sacred space, my temple, is located on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam First Nations. It was not until settlers stole the land that my temple was given the name White Cliff Park. When I tread upon the sacred ground of this part of the Squamish Nation, my whole being is opened to the miracles which abound upon this holy earth. The images on your screen, they do not do this temple of the earth justice, but long after my worship there ends, these images of sacred vistas, these photographs, they provide my mind's eye with icons to point me beyond myself, to the one who is beyond the beyond and beyond that also. From within this sacred temple, I can see the imposing wonder of the coastal mountains as they dip their toes in the mouth of the Squamish Inlet. From my favorite spot within this temple, I can gaze across the deep, deep waters to the island the Squamish people know as Noquelaquam, and known by settlers like myself as Bowen Island. I can look down upon the shores of White Cove in wonder at the little rock known as Bird Inlet, where on occasion I have been blessed by the sight of seals sunning themselves upon the rocks. This temple of the earth is beyond beauty, beyond words, beyond the power of these images to convey the sacred, the holiness, or the way in which the one who is speaks, touches, delights, challenges, loves each and every worshiper who reverently walks upon this sacred part of the earth. I hope that my feeble attempt to describe one of the most blessed sanctuaries upon the earth gives way to the power of your own mind's eye to summon up for you sacred memories of the earth's temples where you have been blessed to worship. While these images begin to open you to the sacredness of our Mother, the earth, follow me as I attempt to follow Jesus into the temple in Jerusalem. Imagine, if you will, Jesus' sense of excitement and anticipation at returning to the temple during the holy pilgrimage of Passover. A multitude of emotions must have been swirling around inside of Jesus as he approached Jerusalem. Writing much later than the other anonymous gospel storytellers, which we call Mark, Matthew, and Luke, who placed Jesus' encounter in the temple at the beginning of that horrifying week, which we call Holy Week. Our storyteller, John, chooses instead to place his story at the very beginning of his account of Jesus' ministry. Regardless of when it happened, or even if it happened more than once, historians tell us that anyone entering Jerusalem during the latter part of Jesus' lifetime would have walked by hundreds, possibly thousands of crosses upon which hung the rotting flesh of those who dared to challenge their Roman oppressors. Political dissent in Palestine during the Roman occupation was simply not tolerated. Those who protested Roman authority were publicly executed, and the proof of their execution was displayed for all to see: the folly of political opposition to the power of Rome. In the midst of a political reality which made anything short of acquiescence to the status quo life-threatening, Jesus set a course right into the center of the Roman authority of his homeland. Imagine, if you will, Jesus' memories of traveling to the temple in Jerusalem as a boy. All those hours spent studying the Hebrew scriptures with the scribes, and all those Passover meals shared with family. Approaching the walls of the city, moving closer and closer to the action, Jesus' pulse must have quickened. Our gospel storyteller does not appear to have much knowledge of the vast temple of Jerusalem. Our storyteller John simply tells us that in the temple, Jesus found people selling cattle, sheep, and goats, and the money changers seated at their tables. Historians have drawn up plans of the temple which show this area of the temple as the court of women or commerce. I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions from the linking of women and commerce happening outside, separate and apart from the area which housed the Holy of Holies, the dwelling place of priests, the place where Yahweh is encountered. Our storyteller named John simply tells us that upon encountering the sights and sounds, and no doubt the smells of commerce, Jesus set about making a whip of cords and proceeded to drive all of them out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. He also poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. Jesus told those who were selling the doves, "Take these things out of here." We can almost hear Jesus shout, "Stop making Abba's house a marketplace." Later, Jesus dares the temple dwellers to destroy the temple itself. "And in 3 days I will raise it up," says Jesus. The temple dwellers smugly retort, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years. And will you raise it up in 3 days?" Somehow the vision of Jesus' anger at the desecration of the sacred temple by commerce doesn't sit well with his followers. You see, the generations of storytellers and interpreters of stories have reflected on this particular story, and they have chosen to strip Jesus of his anger. The idea that Jesus could become so angry with religious authorities for cooperating with the violent and oppressive Roman imperial system, that he would create such a scene in the temple, is so far from the image of Jesus as the meek and mild, long-haired peacenik which we have come to take for granted and to love. We don't like to imagine Jesus' humanity, especially when we know that anger is a perfectly human emotion. All too often, our desire to stifle Jesus' anger has crept into our perception of anger itself and left some of us who seek to follow Jesus suppressing our own anger, pushing it down, denying it. But there's just one problem with the image of Jesus as meek and mild, as acquiescent. to authority. And that is the reality of the crucified Jesus. Jesus was executed by the state not because of his patience with those in power, but because of his impatience with those in power. Jesus' impatience was born out of his anger at injustice. Anger is a powerful human emotion. Anger is a useful human emotion. Anger lies at the heart of human evolution. Our anger at the way things are can be just the impetus we need to compel us to change the way things are. When anger moves us to reject the status quo, our protests become the means by which we effect change. Anger is not the opposite of love. Anger is a vivid form of caring. Anger is not to be feared nearly as much as we ought to fear indifference. Our anger means we care. We care about what is happening to our fellow human beings. And we care about what is happening to creation. As we attempt to follow Jesus into the temple, I ask you to follow me back to my temple. Imagine my anticipation as I drive those winding roads up to the sanctuary where my sacred memories reside. I can almost smell the sea air which gently blows deep into the rainforest. I don't much mind if the rain falls or the sun shines, because the ever-changing vistas, they are exquisite, no matter what the weather. As I scramble over the rocks to my favorite spot, my heart begins to race as I anticipate the sacred peace which awaits me. Breathing deeply of the Spirit, I catch a whiff of what smells like rotting flesh, and I can barely catch my breath as my eyes struggle to focus on the once grand and glorious whale beached upon the shore. As tears begin to fall, the image of tankers sailing down the coast stirs me with anger which I cannot contain. There are no whips to be fashioned from the swaying grasses, but just as surely as the visions of my worst nightmares conjure up devastation in this sacred temple of the earth, my anger swirls around within me. But as I try to scream, no sound emerges, just an aching plea to the one in whom I live and move and have my being, who holds me close as I weep. It may not be images of tankers offshore which threaten your sacred sanctuary, but I'm sure that wherever your sacred temple of the earth is located, it is the forces of empire and commerce which threaten to desecrate the holiness of the earth which you treasure. When the weeping is done, let the anger work in you to move you to reject the status quo, which insists we worship commerce above all else, above even the earth herself. Remember, our anger at the way things are can be just the impetus we need to compel us to change the way things are. When anger moves us to reject the status quo, our protests can become the means by which we effect change. Anger is not the opposite of love. Anger is a vivid, sometimes sacred form of caring. Our anger is not to be feared nearly as much as we ought to fear our own indifference. Our anger means we care. We care about what's happening to our fellow human beings, and we care about what is happening to the sacred temple of creation, which is the earth herself. It is not too late to use our anger to effect change, for the earth has been here for a long, long time, 4.5 billion years. The earth will change, adapt, and survive with or without our help. But with all her beauty, with all her grace, with all her miracles, our Mother, the Earth, is inviting us to breathe deeply of her magnificence, so that we might join the earth and sing together our hymns of praise with deep, resonant harmonies, so that we can share her bounty with grace. May you return again and again to the earth to find sanctuary where you too can offer praise and thanksgiving to the one who is. The one who is beyond the beyond and beyond that also. Our lover, beloved, and love herself, now and always yours in each and every breath. Amen.